Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and this is going to be my video for the extreme horror tag, which has been created by UxSx Only. He has asked us to recommend some of the movies in our collection that we consider to be extreme horror films, or as he likes to put it, not for beginners, which I think is a good term. So I've had a look through my collection and I've picked out some of the movies that I believe are quite extreme. So I'll go through them with you now. Just want to give a bit of a warning. A few of these movies do contain some really harsh animal cruelty. So if you are an animal lover, and I'm an animal lover, you may want to give this one a bit of a dodge. I won't be offended if you do. But yeah, there's a bit of animal cruelty and general unpleasantness in this video, so I won't be offended if you skip this one. But if you are a sick and twisted individual like myself and UxSx Only, stick around. There might be some movies that you find interesting. So the first movie I'm going to mention is Bone Sickness. And this one isn't particularly nasty. It's just very extreme in the gore effects. It's a zombie film, and when zombies are killed, there's just sprayings of blood going everywhere. So, but bodies pulled apart, people bitten and blood spraying out everywhere, heads exploding, heads crushed, all that kind of thing. It's a low budget film, but they really go to town on the blood and gore effects. There are some extreme gore effects in this film, so very entertaining stuff in that regard. So the first movie is Bone Sickness. Next movie is a Mondo documentary called Brutes and Savages. Partly ridiculous, but partly shocking at the same time. Ridiculous because you can tell this is not really a genuine kind of product. It paints it up to follow this like explorer type of guy who's going around various continents, checking out bizarre rituals and bizarre practices and things like that. Most of it is all fake and ridiculous and staged, but it is interspersed with some really quite shocking scenes, mainly of animal killings and animal slaughters and sacrifices and things like that. It's quite shocking when that comes along. As I say, most of it is ridiculous. You'll find yourself laughing at a lot of it, but some of it really is quite tough in terms of the animal killings. But yeah, definitely not for casual horror fans, I would say. Right, next one. I couldn't do the video without mentioning the next two films. First one is Cannibal Ferox, infamous Italian cannibal movie. Extremely violent, littered with more animal cruelty, more animal killings, but very entertaining film. One of my favourite Italian cannibal films. But yeah, certainly not for the squeamish, not for the beginner of horror movies, I would say. And the next one, probably the most infamous of the Italian cannibal films, and I would say the most shocking, Cannibal Holocaust. Probably don't need to say too much about this movie. You all know this film. You know the atrocious things that go on in it. The director of this movie was actually arrested when it was released because they thought he had murdered people for real, which gives you an idea of the level of violence and blood and gore that's in this movie. So yeah, very extreme film. Definitely not for everyone. Next film is another cannibal film. I'm not going to keep going through cannibal films. I just thought these three stood out as being the most extreme. And the next one is Eaten Alive. And again, I just remember this one having quite a lot of animal cruelty. A lot of animals fighting to the death and things being chopped up. Plus some quite cool human violence, which of course is fake, but good blood and gut effects and things like that. People being peeled open and things like that. So yeah, another one that I really enjoyed, but very, very gory and heavy on the animal cruelty. Right, next movie is the infamous Faces of Death. A film that I think has somewhat lost its kind of mystery over the years, because we've gone on to learn that most of the scenes in this were fake. But I still think the fake scenes were very well done, and it does still have some genuine shocking scenes in it that are real. The scenes from the slaughterhouse comes to mind, and the seal clubbing scenes are still pretty hard hitting. And I have a lot of respect for Faces of Death. I have a lot of respect for what it did and what it stood for, especially in that kind of VHS era, when horror films were infiltrating the home market, and this one was kind of like leading the way with its pitchfork of the more extreme and kind of underground horror films. And for a long time, this film kind of represented the most darkest of horror that you could get. Nowadays I have seen a lot worse, but at the time this was like the film to see if you wanted to go down that route. So yeah, I'm a fan of Faces of Death, got a lot of respect for it. So that's that one. Next movie is Hate Crime. Not extreme or shocking in terms of a blood or guts or violence kind of way, although there is a lot of violence in it. This one is more verbally extreme. This is a found footage movie where three masked men break into a Jewish family's home, and they proceed to terrorize them and humiliate them and torture them and kill them. But it's got a slew of racist language. Yeah, all kinds of unpleasant language going on in this one. It's actually banned in the UK for its, I believe the word is anti-Semitic language. So yeah, really kind of extreme and unpleasant in that kind of respect. Not a great movie either, not one that I would recommend. But yeah, rather extreme in that kind of way. So a bit of a different one from the blood and guts side of things. Next movie is Irreversible, which is famous for the brutal rape scene. Horrible scene, very, very long, very prolonged, no cutting away, in fact no camera moving at all. Really, really extreme and unpleasant scene to watch. I'm not going to recommend this movie because of that scene. If you want to see how they make it so horrific, then feel free to check it out. It's a good movie, it's a very well made film, and its overarching story is fantastic, but that is an extremely unpleasant scene. So I thought that deserved a mention on the list. Next movie is Men Behind the Sun, which is like a documentary kind of type film about the Japanese prison camps in the Second World War and the horrible experiments that they used to do on the Chinese prisoners. So there's an array of really nasty things going on in this. People, the famous scene where the woman has her hands frozen and then they pour boiling water over her hands and her skin comes off. The awful scene of the woman and a child in the gas chamber, that was pretty grueling. There's the scene where the cat is eaten by the rats, although I have learned that is fake, actually. And I believe they put jam on the cat, which encouraged the rats to kind of crawl onto the cat, but they weren't eating it. So, yeah, you don't need to worry about the cat. Although the rats were set on fire at the end of the movie for real. All that stuff is real. So another unpleasant one. Very kind of downbeat and depressing as well. Not one that you sit and have a good time watching and eating popcorn. So yeah, Men Behind the Sun. Next up, we've got Mondo Cane, which is very outdated now, but still an interesting watch. It mainly documents a bunch of weird practices and religions across the world. But again, there is some shocking animal cruelty in this. Some pigs get killed. There's a bull that gets killed, and there's probably the most bizarre animal cruelty I've seen, which is sharks being force-fed these poisonous sea urchins because the people in this island believe they need to take revenge for their friends and family being killed by sharks. So there's some very bizarre things in Mondo Cane. Definitely not for beginners, but interesting, albeit very outdated stuff. Next one, I'm sticking with the Mondo Cane collection, and this is probably the most extreme and shocking film that I own, and it's Africa Addio. So the makers of Mondo Cane, after being successful with Mondo Cane, wanted to make similar shocking stuff. So they travelled to Africa, where there was a lot of problems, a lot of disputes. The British Army were pulling out of Africa, so there was a bit of a power shift, and the things that they documented for Africa Addio are just unbelievable. I mean, like full-on genocides, murder, executions, and some real stomach-churning animal cruelty and poaching. It is unbelievable what goes off in this film. Probably the most shocking thing I've ever seen. You've got elephants and hippos being killed by wooden spears. You've got zebras being mutilated, baby elephants being chopped up. It is really unpleasant stuff. Fascinating in a way, fascinating piece of history, but very, very extreme violence and gore, all of which is real. I have no qualms saying that. So yeah, really strong stuff, Africa Addio. And the last thing, it's just a cool little set which I found ages ago, is Shockumentary from Blue Underground. It's actually the same, it's just a couple of Mondo Cane documentaries. It's Africa Addio and it's Goodbye Uncle Tom, which is a very outdated look at slavery and things like that. Very, very shocking and extreme in its have to be careful what I say with this one, but in its racist and outdated views, even to the point where you have so-called physicians explaining why the brains of ethnic minorities are smaller than that of white people and things like that. So really extreme in its prejudiced and outdated views. But again, an interesting historical timepiece, if you will, to see how things have changed. So I hope that gave you some good suggestions, us only, and anyone else that's watching this. Let me know what you think. Have you seen any of these? What did you think of them? Any other shocking ones that you think I should pick up? Let me know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.